Hi, this is David Altaner, journalist from Gambling Compliance, VIXIO Gambling Compliance in London. We've had some technical delays, so we might as well dive right in. We're going to have a report from the Netherlands and the UK and hopefully from France. Let's start with the Netherlands. Alan, can you give us a rundown on the run-up to licensing, which is supposed to be scheduled for March?
Yes, so I'm Anne Littler from Kalff, Katz and Franssen, based in Amsterdam. So we deal exclusively with the Netherlands and have been following developments on this dossier from, well, before it was born, so to speak, many years ago. I think the gambling dossier the remote gambling dossier in particular, has been subject to many delays over the years, as many people will be familiar with. However, it now looks like the 1st of March 2021 will be the date on which everything kicks off. The Remote Gambling Bill, or the Remote Gambling Act, was passed in 2019, and we've been waiting for the sort of minister's signal that things will start to roll as of a particular date. That date is the 1st of March. And that was confirmed in a letter from the minister at the start of last month, the 4th of September. And since that has happened, the Gambling Authority has started to move forward with publishing various documents. And it is very importantly, it has published a calendar of what it expects to do in the coming months, leading up to the licensing process opening. So the idea is the law enters into force and the license process opens on the same day. Of course, various things have to happen before then, and there is a tiny prospect for delay to arise, but that relates the notification process to the European Commission. But all guns are pointing towards the 1st, and we don't really expect any delay. Famous last words, hopefully not. So the Gambling Authority has published some information. For example, we now know that the license application form will be made available in November, along with the policy rule, which covers various aspects which will be key to the licensing process, such as the reliability test and, very importantly, the cooling off period. So that will be made available in November in draft form, and the final version will be made available in January 2021. One of the big questions we get is about testing and certification requirements and when the reports, etc., have to be delivered. That appears to be scheduled, or at least the outcome of the Gambling Authority's current feasibility study into their requirements, into their ideas, will be made known in November. So we'll have more idea of the requirements then. The license application process, it should last about 6 months. Therefore, those who are eligible to apply on the 1st of March, when the process opens, should get their license within that 6-month period. And the idea is that those who all apply at that very opening of the process will all be able to go online at the same time, 1st of September 2021. The other applicants will apply, well, if you haven't had an offer on the Dutch market to date, as and when you choose. But those who have had or do have a locally unlicensed offer will have to demonstrate that they've cooled off for 32 months. And the cooling off criteria have been made available in draft form in July 2019, and broadly reflect the prioritization criteria which underpins the enforcement actions of the Gambling Authority for the past few years. Plus, there's also the requirement to have an age verification process in place for the Netherlands as of the start of January 2020. It's important to realise that if you have been on the market already, you'll need to demonstrate that you have complied for 32 months with the cooling off criteria. If you apply too early, that will be grounds for the Gambling Authority to reject the licence application. And sorry, I've got a message on my screen. That will be a ground for the Gambling Authority to reject your application and consider it, well, not consider, give it any further consideration. It's also important to realise that if you have to rely on the cooling off criteria, then you'll only have a 12-month window in which to apply. If you apply after the end of February 2022, then the Gambling Authority will revert to its default reliability test, which will mean an unlicensed presence on the Dutch market will result in the rejection of the license application. So that's very key, to get that license application in that first year, but also to have called off for 32 months beforehand. Conscious of the time, and things are a little bit different than we'd planned, what we suggest operators, potential applicants start doing is to perform a gap analysis, to have a look at the documentation which is required by the Gambling Authority. They've already published information about this, but also to delve into the regulation, the remote gambling regulation, the remote gambling decree, the remote gambling act, and so forth, to figure out, to have a gap analysis, what's different to other jurisdictions, what might we need to do for the first time or to do anew for the Netherlands. There are some quite specific things, and we would advise not leaving everything until March or February, but to start, having a good look at the regulatory requirements and figuring out, even if they're not 100% final, even though the Gambling Authority will subsequently produce various policy notes and pieces of guidance, to already figure out what can we do now, what do we need to get in order that perhaps we don't already have in-house, who do we need to line up externally. So that's where we are in the Netherlands right now. So I will go back to David.
So what do you expect about how the cooling off period will play out? Do we have any specific, what do we know about how it will be applied?
The proof of the pudding will be in the eating, I guess. Yeah, that's a good question. The Gambling Authority has published a draft policy note on the cooling off period in July of last year. That will then be sort of transformed into a broader policy note, which will be published towards the end of this year, at least in draft form to begin with. And with the documentation that was published last week by the Gambling Authority in terms of this is what you can already start thinking about to get your license application process going internally, it's quite clear that the Gambling Authority wants to know everything. You have to say, in relation to each of the individual conditions, have you done this, yes or no? And if you have done that, you have to give the date on which, if you have done something in particular, such as offering Ideal, you have to give the date on which you no longer offered Ideal. And then the Gambling Authority will be able to see whether it's been 32 months. They also state that you have to give everything. If you doubt whether something is relevant or not, you have to provide it. If you consider it to be only in a minor infraction of the cooling off criteria, you have to provide it. So in that sense, I think the Gambling Authority want to know everything. The way the draft policy rule is written, it's very black and white. If you breach one of the criteria and you haven't called off for 32 months at the time of application, that will be a rejection of your application. How stringent they are in practice remains to be a good question. And that's something we won't see, I don't think, until later, during, further down the road. And of course, if you cool off in June 2021 or June 2021 or December 2021, then I would suggest don't apply early. Apply when you're confident, or as confident as you can be, that you've cooled off.
And if you're rejected once, can you apply again, or have you got a big problem?
I think then you've got a big problem, especially if you misled on the application form.
Huh. Very interesting.
I think the best way to see it is as a one-shot, a single chance of doing this. So to err on the side of caution and perhaps apply a few months later, and be sure that you've fulfilled the 32 months on all of the points rather than applying earlier and tripping up. But so of course, within the first 12 months.
Err on the side of caution is your advice.
Yes.
Good one. Joe, the UK is still the world's biggest regulated online gambling market, and it's getting more a lot of controversial issues. Can you give us a rundown?
Hi, David. Yes, I can hit some of the key issues. For those who don't know me, I'm Joe Ewens. I'm the managing editor at VIXIO Gambling Compliance. I think a lot of the focus in the UK is unquestionably on the potential reform of the Gambling Act. It's although I never say never in politics, but it's pretty much nailed on. This is going to happen. It was promised in every single political party manifesto before the most recent election, including the ruling Conservative Party. And although they haven't officially announced anything about when it might begin, there's certainly a lot of lobbying going on, a lot of kind of rumours swirling. The most significant pieces of lobbying have come probably, at least in the public sphere, in the form of a few reports. One of them produced by the All-Party Parliamentary Group on gambling-related harm, which used to be dedicated solely to the destruction of fixed odds betting terminals, a cause which they, well, among others, were successful in prosecuting. You may remember the stakes on those were dropped to £2, which essentially eliminated them. They produced a report detailing what they would like to be in the new Gambling Act, replacing the existing 2005 legislation. And it's as you might expect, it's pretty severe stuff from an industry perspective, including things like very low stake limits. Likely, probably to be a bit more influential on the actual final bill is the Lords report. The Lords, which is the upper house of the British or the UK Parliament, spent more than a year doing a very long investigation into gambling, lots and lots of interviews with all sorts of different people, and produced a report, which was about 198 pages, something like that. Very thorough, goes through pretty much every issue you can imagine in relation to the gambling market. It's more even-handed than you'd say than the APPG report, but it still includes some pretty what would be pretty drastic changes, including the severing of the connection between gambling and sports. There's a lot of gambling sponsorship in sports. That continues to be a very controversial issue within the public sphere in the UK, and there's reasonable chance that if there's definitely going to be at least pressure for the government to either ban all kinds of gambling sports sponsorships, or at least place significant restrictions on them. But as I say, we don't really know when it's going to start. There are a few people I've spoken to are saying it'll be in the next few weeks, but some of those people have been saying it's going to be in the next few weeks for a while. So it's kind of difficult to say when it might happen. The UK government has a few different things on its plate, not least COVID-19, as it pretty much everywhere does, but also the Brexit deadline at the end of this year, and being taken to, being faced with legal action from the EU over its changes to the Brexit withdrawal bill. So there are a few bits and pieces. On the other hand, you could look at it and say, well, Boris Johnson is having a fairly torrid time. Continued reports that he might be forced out, and he could do with a win. There was a fairly high-profile report in The Guardian that the office of the Prime Minister itself would take control of the Gambling Act review away from the DCMS, the government department that would usually handle it. We don't know if that's true or not, but there's definitely interest from Number 10 in this process. Away from the Gambling Act, I guess a lot of the focus is on what the Gambling Commission has been getting up to over the past couple of months. That's sort of led off by the restrictions they introduced during the only kind of full lockdown we've had in the UK so far, on online gambling companies, designed in their mind to protect consumers who may be more vulnerable during a time when they can't go outside and or may have lost their employment or be furloughed. And that included things like a ban on reverse withdrawals, which is to say being able to cancel your withdrawal while it's still pending to get your money back in, which is generally seen as a marker of harm. And also a peculiar provision which said that operators should not offer promotions and bonuses to those displaying signs of harm, which you'd assume is something they wouldn't be doing already, but apparently that was added to the list. Those restrictions remain in place. I've heard a few well-placed legal minds suggest that they probably will remain in place indefinitely, that they were the introduction of things that the Gambling Commission was generally intending to do anyway. Again, we don't know that for sure. That's not all the Commission's been doing, though. It's been acting on various issues, a lot of them spinning out or related to a series of working groups that it ran with the industry. 3 different working groups, one of which was on VIPs. That resulted in some a new industry code on VIPs, things like not offering 225s and things like that. But that has now resulted. Well, the Gambling Commission's version of that has come out as a result of the at the end of a consultation. And we know that they are intending to look more at affordability, which is to say advanced KYC checks on potential gamblers, and at game design over the next couple of months.
Is there evidence? I think it'd be safe to say that the UK and Sweden are probably the toughest regulations. Is there evidence that other countries are following their lead?
I think Alan might be able to answer a little bit of this for the Netherlands. I think that probably it's fair to say the Gambling Commission has been pretty influential on lots of other European jurisdictions, particularly Western European jurisdictions, in the way that it's gone about regulating and handing out fines over the past few years. And I think that it's probably fairly safe to say that the KSA will look to emulate some of that, as the Swedish regulator did once it's online, it's up and running. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but I mean, the Gambling Act has been in force since when, 2007, and the Swedes were pretty tough from day one. Yeah, whether the Gambling Authority in The Hague seeks to emulate, I think they'll be under quite a bit of scrutiny from particular fractions in Parliament to be tough on the industry, and I would hope that perhaps those who enter the market in the first 6 to 12 months, do show some restraint and not go all out in their advertising campaigns to avoid triggering a backlash, which probably hurts more than being sort of moderate from day one. There are some pretty strict requirements in terms of addiction prevention and active duty of care, which will apply, on the basis of the legislation as is at the moment. But given that the regime hasn't started yet and hasn't had any time to bed itself in, some of the discussions which take place in the UK and Sweden and maybe other jurisdictions haven't had the chance to arise yet. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly the regime catches up with what's going on elsewhere and what has been going on. But perhaps a little bit of restraint from day one might also sort of take the wind out of the sails from those who would push for those types of measures. So we have to see.
And I was going to say, having successfully bought time by throwing to Alan for a bit, I would say that they're actually outside of that small group of countries, and I think France is an interesting question, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a second. There's actually quite a bit of diversity among the rest of the European regulators. You'd say Italy, which is another massive market, is regulated very differently from most other countries. Think about the way that Greece is regulated. A lot of the other Nordic countries have monopolies, which engenders a certain amount of regulation. So I'd say regulation is toughening up across the board. You could say that fairly in Europe. I think the style of regulation does vary quite a lot from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
I'm going to check. Simon, are you there? Maybe you need to unmute yourself. I don't know. Simon from the ANJ? Maybe not. Okay. Alan, what responsible gambling provisions are there in the Dutch legislation? And which ones would be not?
We now have Simon.
All right, Simon, give us a rundown of RGL versus ANJ. What's different with ANJ? I think you need to unmute. can we unmute Simon?
Says that he's unmuted, but I can't hear him.
It's a
You hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Now.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead,
Right.
Simon.
Alright. Okay, so yeah, I will speak a bit about the ANJ quickly. I guess we don't have much time. So it was established at the end of June 2020. The idea basically was to create a unique regulator for almost all the gambling industry in France, whereas before we had the ARGEL, which was regulating only the online gambling sector, and then various ministries that were in charge of various aspects of the offline regulation. So basically now the ANJ takes charge of the online gambling sectors. It has also the FDJ monopoly under its supervision. So the FDJ monopoly is the lottery offline and online, plus the sports betting offline. And it represents more than 33,000 shops in France. Then we have the PMU monopoly on horse racing betting offline. That is representing 13,000 shops on the French territory. And we also have under our responsibility the betting on racetracks. So we have more than 230 racetracks in France, and they are allowed to organize bets on race days. So basically it's in the scope of the new ANJ as well. Concerning the casinos, so we have only offline casinos, sorry. In France, we don't have online, it's illegal. The ANJ is only in charge of the responsible gambling aspect, while the ministries of Home Affairs is still in charge of the AML and the integrity of the offer aspects. So in the end, talking about the markets, the ANJ is now in charge of more or less 80% of the industry in terms of GGR, while the ARGEL was in charge of 13% only before June. The French market is worth, to remind you, or more or less 11 billion euros in terms of GGR overall. I don't know if you want me to go in more details or if I don't have time.
I've got a question, Simon.
Yeah.
I think I have these numbers right. When French licensing started, there were more than 50 online gambling licenses, and now there's 18. And
yeah, even 14, yeah.
14, okay.
Yeah.
So that's been blamed on issues like high tax and the fact that there's no online casino. Is there anything the ANJ can do to make it more appealing for applicants, or is this a matter for the politicians? What do you expect?
I mean, the fiscal framework and the legal framework, it's about politicians. I mean, the ANJ is not in charge of setting up the legal and the fiscal framework. What we can do is, I mean, give our thinking and our advices to the politicians, but it's not the ANJ is not in charge, and the ARGEL was not as well of the legal framework and the fiscal framework. So there is nothing much we can do, like in practice, to change that.
I heard your president say she was interviewed by Zlatan.
Yes.
She said she wants to work with the industry. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, of course, the idea is to work with the operators. The idea is to set up the most efficient framework, regulatory framework, and I mean, we need them and we need their thinking to set up something that is efficient and precise. What we have done already and what we are doing right now is to provide them with tools to help them to comply with the new set of rules. For instance, we are setting up a precise framework on responsible gambling, where basically we will provide the operators with precise guidelines to respect the rules, on what we expect from them, best practice, and all this kind of stuff that will help them to comply with the new rules and with the new legal framework. We do the same with AML as well, so we will really talk with them and yes, set the framework with them and help them to comply with it.
The ANJ has new powers over advertising. Can you explain a little bit over how that's going to work?
Well, we have two ways. I mean, the advertising for gambling in France is limited in 3 ways right now. So you can't publish or broadcast an ad on a media that is specifically targeting minors to protect them. You must on your ad feature prevention message such as gambling harms or don't hesitate to call for help or this kind of message. And you must show at some point the telephone number of the gambling help platform, national platform, to drive players that have problems to call them. We will have a new decree, a new legal framework that will add some limitation. For instance, there will be a limitation on, operator won't be able to broadcast a commercial that induce that gambling is helping or contributing to a social success, or that is that gambling is a substitute for work or mean of earning money. So that will be some new limitation. The role of the ANJ is to make sure that the operators will respect this limitation and their obligations. We have 2 ways. First of all, we will approve the promotional strategy plans at the end of each year. These plans will basically highlight the main promotional campaigns, the budget, the type of media used, the main targets, the bonuses mechanism, basically describe everything that they will do in terms of commercial promotion. And we will have to approve it, and basically more than a control aspect on this plan, it will give us a global overview of the promotional context in the market, and it will help us to take decision during the year on specific cases. When I talk about specific cases, we have also another power, that is that we have the ability to require the withdrawal of a commercial communication that we will use if we think it's necessary, and if the particular communication will don't respect the obligation and the limitation that are set by the legal framework, which, as I said, target minors, target specifically excessive gamblers, minimizes the role of hazard in any game, imply that gambling contributes to social success or is a mean of earning money, or all this limitation that I spoke about before.
Can you find operators whose advertising breaks the rules?
Yeah, we have sanction procedures for sure for everything that operators do that don't respect their obligation. We can find them. It can be from a warning, the sanction procedures from a warning to the suspension of the agreement, and of course we have different level of fines that we can apply if the operators don't respect the obligation, and especially if they don't respect it after we help them to comply with the new rules. So our strategy is not to reign over the market and to act as the police. The idea is to work with the operators. If they still don't comply, then of course we won't hesitate to use the sanction procedures.
Okay. Alan, let's move back to the Netherlands. Are there provisions with treatment of VIPs, and how about advertising?
Yeah, sure. VIPs, I think the discussion that's starting or has started in the UK is not one which has taken place here. I mean, the regime isn't operational yet, so the debates are somewhat more about how do we get the licensing system going, rather than matters which sort of arise once the regime has been going for a while. So at the moment there is no discussion about VIPs or high value players, high value customers. But there are, well, of course, there are many measures to do with advertising, and the you know, an operator will also have to have an advertising policy. They will also have to undertake a risk analysis as to the the risks of associated with particular products in terms of gambling addiction, and that risk assessment has to feed into their addiction prevention policy, and that assessment also has to feed into their advertising policy. That's established in secondary legislation. And furthermore, sorry, David.
Sorry, I was going to say, does the KSA have the power to fine people for advertising, or does some other agency?
Yeah, so there's the Advertising Reclama Code Committee, so the sort of self-regulatory body which is applicable for advertising, the Advertising Commission. That applies to all forms of gambling, all forms of advertising rather, and it's a particular subset of the code for advertising. But I think the key role will also be for the Gambling Authority, and it will also have the ability to take measures in terms of operators who don't comply with their regulatory requirements, be that on advertising or be that on other measures, other regulatory requirements. But again, I mean, the Gambling Authority, in terms of remote at least, has been more about enforcement at the moment and previously. So it'll be interesting to see what their view on enforcement is, and their enforcement policy, and how they intend to go about using the tools that they'll have in due course.
Is there rules about influencers, third parties?
There are, yes. There are rules in terms of advertising about the ability of an operator to use an individual sports person or another role model in their advertising. So an operator won't be able to use an individual who is under 25 or whose reach target market is on, or those who are under 25. So even if you were a sports person, David, maybe you are, but even if you were, the gambling operator would have to conduct a sort of assessment to see whether you have a target market of individuals who are under 25, and the operator will also have to consider whether the products or services which you have previously advertised were targeted at those under 25. So yes, you can have a role model or an influencer, but they shouldn't have a target market of those who are 18 to 24. And they shouldn't target minors, clearly.
Simon,
so how that will pan out in practice remains to be seen.
Simon, are there rules about Instagram influencers and such in France?
Well, it's pretty much the same, and you can't use an Instagrammer or a role person or role model that whose public is mainly or specifically composed of minors. So that's what we have to assess. And for sports person, it's a bit difficult because, I mean, of course they reach minors, so it's hard to assess if the target or if the public is specifically composed of minors or not. But basically, yeah, we have the same rules and the same process to as Alan was talking about before.
Joe, in the UK, there have been some people in the anti-gambling gambling addiction activists who have eyed the German legislation favorably. They like the €1 slots limit and a few other things. Is that, how likely is something like that?
Very difficult to say how likely it is. I think it will at least be part of the conversation. I mean, there's been, I have to say, from the Gambling Commission's perspective, and they will obviously have a key role in advising government when it comes to the actual review, there's generally been reticence for them to push very hard on stake limits online. They've generally, when pushed on it in various hearings and things, said that they think there are other measures and the existing regulations have enough in them that operators should be able to protect consumers without having specific limits placed on them. But as you say, it's definitely something that the you can call on the anti-gambling lobby, perhaps, or the the slightly more slightly less liberal side of the gambling lobby are definitely pushing for that. You'd have to say that, much like if we look at the fixed odds betting situation where the stakes were reduced, that was quite a long and messy process, and we understand that there was significant resistance from the Treasury at some point, and you'd have to assume that again there'll need to be some sort of economic analysis done within government of how much this is going to cost the exchequer, especially at a time when the government purse is going to be hurting because of the furlough scheme, because of the contraction of the economy due to COVID-19. So I think it will definitely be on the agenda, but it's far from a foregone conclusion. I think that something like that would be introduced in the UK.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. I don't even know if there's a capacity for people to ask questions, but let me open it up, and if you can ask a question, ask it.
You can maybe type it in the Zoom chat if people can type into that. I don't know.
All right, Alan, last question. Have you got an office pool about how many people licensees will be granted versus how many apply? And what would you bet yourself?
Sorry, the last bit I didn't quite catch.
What would you guess yourself if you had to pick a number?
If I had to pick a number. Yeah, we've been looking at this quite considerably. I mean, also we've been scaling up in the office. We imagine that there could be in total about 20 applicants who apply on the 1st of March, and towards perhaps the 80 mark overall, at least in the sort of first year or so. Of course, there'll be some people, some operators, some applicants who have no chance, and those who perhaps get a rather surprising response from the Gambling Authority, positively or negatively. Yeah, I would say maybe around the 50 mark.
So you're guessing around 50 or 60 eventually?
Yes. Well, it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say.
Cool. Well, thank you. I think we'll draw it to a close. Thanks, everybody, and sorry about all the technical problems. Bye-bye.
No problem.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi. Do not leave this room, anybody, because we are still here. We are going to use Zoom now for the upcoming sessions. So I have here our next moderator, Harrison Sawyers. Let's just see where he is. Hi,
Hello.
Harrison. Can you hear us?
Hi, Zlatan. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can. Luka and Zlatan are also most probably. Yes, they are here. Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, I will leave this to you, Harrison, to start because I have to do some background coding. See you soon, guys.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So yeah, we're going to be covering Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, and Montenegro. I'm joined here today by Luka Popovic, who's a partner at BDK Advokati, and Zlatan, who's the head of legal and compliance data protection officer at NSoft. We're a little bit behind time, and I'm a bit aware that we don't have the most amount of time for this session. So if we could just start off with Luka and explore a bit about Montenegro and Serbia regulation at the moment.
Thank you. Well, this is already a traditional panel. At least me and Zlatan are traditionally covering this part of the Balkans. And as far as I will start with Montenegro, 2 years ago, I was talking about the upcoming Montenegro. It was a hot topic in Montenegro then. And then last year in Budapest, I also spoke about the same upcoming legislation. And I can repeat that we are expecting the new legislation to be adopted soon in Montenegro, a long-awaited legislation that it took the government a bit, to prepare the drafts of this legislation, because there were various influences lobbying, from different sides. And the last information I have is that it was supposed to be in place until the end of this year. But now the things are changing in Montenegro because we had elections a month ago, and now we don't know what the new government's position would be with respect to the new legislation. In brief, we are expecting that the new law regulates the lottery in a different manner. We don't have a lottery operator in Montenegro since the end of 2016, December 2016, when the last license that was issued expired. And since then, we don't have a lottery operator, and there is a huge opportunity there. There are a lot of interested operators, international operators, but there is no tender. There's no tendering process for the new license because the legislation is outdated. It dates from the time when the lottery was owned by the state. So you can imagine that a lot of things were not simply regulated, including the award fee for the license. Aside from that, the online regulation for online gambling in Montenegro is a bit outdated and not quite practical. You see, in Montenegro, you cannot have a standalone license for online gambling business. Basically, what you have to do is to get a license for brick and mortar business, for land-based gambling, and then once you get that license, you are applying for an additional license, like an add-on license for online gambling, which is not practical. And from my experience, it was a deal breaker for many potential investors and operators. Then there's been also a lot of discussion in the past few years about the gambling terminals, which are basically gambling machines which were installed in cafes, restaurants, in venues which otherwise are not supposed to be offering such kind of games. But there was a few years ago, there was a certain decree issued by the ministry which provided for that opportunity. It was controversial. The matter was controversial, and eventually the Constitutional Court quashed that decision. So now it is not legal to have the gambling terminals in cafes and restaurants. There is a certain number of those who were already issued the licenses before the decision was quashed. But from the reports, from the information I have, there is quite a lot of tax revenue coming from those gambling terminals. So I'm not sure what the government's position towards that kind of business would be. And casinos are also one of the things that we expect the new legislation to regulate the matter. in a bit more flexible way. Currently, casino license is very expensive, so you need 2 million euros one-off fee just to start. You know, it's non-refundable. Basically, it's an issue for the new investor, and Montenegro is quite interesting for casino business. There's already 5 casinos, and there is room for more. Also, there is a lot of requirement from casino operators that the new legislation provides for some more flexible ways to manage and operate casinos. You know, there are some instances where investors do not want to own casino, but simply to operate casino under their own international brand. But such option is right now in a gray zone. You know, it's not prohibited, but it's not regulated. So it opens, if one enters such kind of arrangement with a casino owner, then it opens some tax issue, regulatory issue, and so on. So basically, there is a lot of things that we expect from the new legislation. Now, we don't know when to expect the announcement. The last announcement was until the end of the year, but as I said, we have a new government, and then, of course, the pandemics. So as we discussed on an earlier occasion, the only thing that is certain now is that nothing is certain. So uncertainty is the only certain thing. So it's really hard to predict when to expect the new legislation in Montenegro.
And I know you mentioned there that Montenegro has a new government, but if we move on to Serbia, it's perhaps even a bit more of a uncertain situation, if you will.
Well, as far as the government is concerned, there is no uncertainty in Serbia. They had elections recently as well. Nothing has changed there. So there is stability as far as the government is concerned in Serbia, but they adopted new law. New Gambling Act was adopted entered into force in April. It came together with COVID-19, so it's not as bad as COVID, but it imposed some additional capital requirements and financial obligations on the operators in Serbia. For example, share capital requirements, which are needed to get the license for a gambling operator in Serbia, are for some types of gambling almost doubled. For example, for betting, for slot machines, I'm talking about land-based businesses, operations, they increased them from 150 to 250,000 euros. And not only that, before, if one wanted to offer different types of games like online gambling, land-based betting, slot machines, you could only satisfy the highest capital requirement, like 250,000 euros, and that's it. You cover them all. But the new law provides that there is a cumulative requirement for basically you have to sum up all the capital requirements for all the games you want to offer. So what was possible to be offered with 250 or 150,000 euros capital before now requires 500,000 euros or 100,000 euros. So it's really a significant increase in terms of the share capital requirement. And similarly, some other financial obligations like mandatory bank guarantees. The operators have to keep bank guarantees or bank deposits as security for winnings or duties, taxes, etc., and they are significantly increased. And on top of that, also the operation fees, monthly fees payable to the government are increased. So yes, it's interesting in Serbia as well.
I mean, I definitely, during a few conferences last year, a lot of people were mentioning not only the cost of Serbia, but like you mentioned, just the fact that everything has gone up. You know, it's a lot harder. I think a lot of people were expecting to enter the Serbian market when it opened, but I think it's become very hard for smaller operators.
No, definitely, and not only the new operators, also the existing ones are required to increase their capital, and they have to comply with the new law in the next year. Actually, a bit less until July next year. So yeah, there is a lot of complaint, especially from the smaller operators and businesses.
I guess just before we move on, I know that COVID's obviously a huge impact everywhere. Could you give us anything specific that COVID has done to the Serbian or Montenegrin market?
Yeah, we had in March and April, business was closed, shut down, except for the online business. So I think the revenue drop was around 95%. Plus the online gambling didn't help much because at that time, you know, most of the leagues, sports events were canceled. So the result from the online operations were also poor. And now I think that now we are at some 50% of normal level of revenues right now, because although the gambling is now, the businesses are open, the shops are open, gambling shops, you know, you don't see much people, especially now in Montenegro, because we are now we don't have the best situation right now with respect to the coronavirus. So we don't see many people playing. So I think after tourism in Montenegro, I think that gambling business is the one that was hit really hard, you know, in terms of economy.
It's definitely land-based heavy, like you say, and really struggled with online from what I've heard as well from lawyers and things. I guess Zlatan, you've been very patient.
Yes, definitely. I enjoy this conversation and this insight from Luka.
That's the thing. We're going to go from straightforward to, I think, one of the more complicated regulations in Europe with Bosnia and Herzegovina. So would you like to explain the three systems they have there? Or?
Yes, actually, thank you, Harrison. I like to say hello to everyone, and it's always a pleasure to be part of this, as Lucas said, traditionally panel. Yes, first thing we should realize about Bosnia and Herzegovina is that we have a complex constitutional system. Because of that fact, we have a free betting acts in Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republic of Srpska, which are federal units in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and one in Brčko district, which is a special administrative unit in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have differences in regulation between these three betting acts, so we can say that there is no unique market space, and because if you go in another federal unit, you will face some different provision. This is especially fact. This is true after the Republic of Srpska adopted the new law in March 2019. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, it is important to emphasize that the state doesn't have the competence to be policy and lawmaker. Regarding the market, we can generally say that the market is very stable, and betting, all kind of betting, are very popular in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we can say that companies, especially before the COVID, increasing the profit continuously. People like to play, as I said, all kinds of betting, such as live betting, virtual games, and also they are very popular draw-based games. What we need to say, yes, this fact that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a state that has aimed to become candidate to a European Union member state, is obliged to harmonize their law system with the European Union standards. So in some industries it takes very well, for example, insurance and banking sector. But in betting, I think we need a huge reform. The Republic of Srpska get a few steps back with this new betting act, from my opinion, because in the betting act of the Republic of Srpska, in Article 7. I think it's clearly stated that the betting industry is in the public interest of that federal unit, so the lottery of the Republic of Srpska has a monopoly position. Additionally, the law strengthened the role of the public company lottery of Republic of Srpska, and the Ministry of Finance has abolished the right to organize electronic games by private organizers. According to the new law, such games can only be organized by lottery of Republic of Srpska, which can then independently select another company for the organization of these games. So establishing a monopoly in all kinds of betting games is not a good decision for free market, especially if you already have another regime and you now put a monopoly. So, as a conclusion, definitely in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we need to see changes in accordance with responsible gambling and also with AML policy, where I see also space for improving when we talking about betting. That is in short about the regulatory framework in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
And similarly, I'd like to ask you has COVID impacted the market greatly? Is there a new need for state revenue from gambling, or?
Well, the situation is particularly very similar, like Luka said. COVID-19 has a huge impact on the economy in Bosnia and Herzegovina in general. I read yesterday that we have some not so optimistic forecasts that fall in GDP would be around 10.9%. So that is for Bosnia and Herzegovina is a huge percent. So during the lockdown in March and April, retail was hit a lot because business was shut down. We need to know that our market is almost in the retail segment. The land base is more popular than online, so betting market because of that fact was hit a lot, and we now can see some a recovery from that period, but it's still a very situation is not so good.
Now, I know this is billed as a Balkans panel, and I think it would be a bit amiss if we didn't kind of catch on to the feeling in the area that a lot of people have been pushing anti-gambling sentiment, a lot of politicians in different countries around the Balkans. Is that the case in Bosnia at the moment?
If we make a parallel with, for example, Kosovo and Albania, we cannot say that we will have that situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I think on the worst case scenario is something like we have introducing the monopoly system, like we have in Republic of Srpska, but completely forbidden the betting industry. I think it's gonna not happen.
So I guess if we kind of got onto a more general chat and kind of move away just from the purely regulation, do you feel that the Balkan anti-gambling sentiment, for instance, Luka, could move somewhere like Serbia or Montenegro as well? Or again, do you feel those areas are a bit different to Kosovo and Albania?
Well, I think there's difference. Actually, in Serbia and Montenegro, sports betting especially is like national pastime. A lot of people is playing, and it's really hard for me to imagine such similar approach governments of Montenegro and Serbia, like in Albania and Kosovo. On the other hand, in this time of crisis, economic crisis, I'm not sure that any government would take such risk to close a lot of jobs. That this industry is employing significant number of people in our countries. So at least for now and for some time in the future, I really don't expect something like that. It would really be an extreme move from our governments.
Because I know, for instance, Albania right now, the deputy prime minister just controversially signed into a new law allowing for casinos to be built in part of their capital again, and the prime minister has just said that's not essentially what the law says. just from a kind of your feeling, you know, we've talked about losses of revenue from COVID and things like that. Could you see now as a time when the Balkan countries, rather than going towards gambling bans, are going to start to open up their gambling industries again?
Well, I'm not sure. What I know that there is impact on the ban in Albania, in Montenegro, because we have now quite a number of Albanian operators who are working in Montenegro. So that's the effect we saw until now. But let's see. It's really hard to predict. You know, as I said, uncertainty is the only uncertain thing right now.
And I feel for Zlatan, I thought it was very interesting what Luka said about Albanians gambling in Serbia. And I was wondering, is it the case, do Bosnians go elsewhere to find, for instance, like online gambling and things like that? Is that an issue for Bosnians?
No, there is not issue in Bosnia, and we don't have. From my best know, we don't have Albanian operators in Bosnia and Herzegovina yet, but we have some decision from Constitutional Court of Republika Srpska, which is recent, which is old a few days. Namely, Constitutional Court of Republic Srpska annulment by law regulation in Republic Srpska, which that regulation define criteria for choosing the company which will have with the public company lottery of Republic of Srpska right to operate in Republic of Srpska. So they said that provision of that by law were not in accordance with the principle of legality and constitutionality. I didn't have a chance to read the whole decision because court hadn't published yet, but this could be sign that the whole act, betting act, could not be compliant with the constitution. So I'm expecting definitely a new process on constitutional court very soon to be initiated from operators, and maybe to the constitutional court said that the whole betting act is not in accordance with principle of constitutionality, and definitely this is something what can be very interesting in the next few months or half of a year.
And this is a question for either one of you. Money laundering issues were a big factor in Albania originally, banning their casinos, and it's a similar criminal issue in Kosovo. Are there any criminal issues associated at the moment with the gambling industries in Serbia or in Bosnia?
Well, as far as Serbia and Montenegro are concerned, I'm really not aware of any, at least any big case right now, anything that would attract, you know, public attention. So nothing significant.
The Constitutional Court said that the whole betting act is not in accordance with principle of constitutionality, and definitely this is something what can be very interesting in the next few months or half of a year.
And this is a question for either one of you. Money laundering issues were a big factor in Albania originally, banning their casinos, and it's a similar criminal issue in Kosovo. Are there any criminal issues associated at the moment with the gambling industries in Serbia or in Bosnia?
Well, as far as Serbia and Montenegro are concerned, I'm really not aware of any, at least any big case right now, anything that would attract, you know, public attention. So nothing significant in Serbia and Montenegro.
So a much cleaner public image.
Yeah, definitely same situation.
We can say so.
The same situation is in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's not really something what give up the public intention. So regarding that question, everything seems to be fine.
Definitely. I feel before we go, it'd be good to
no one has been caught actually.
Yeah, I mean,
yes. correct.
No, but all jokes aside, obviously, I've not seen anything about those markets. So I was just asking for fun. But I guess, are there any regulations in the pipeline that you can see changing, or do you think right now Serbia, for instance, isn't going to alter its high license fees, or do you think that'll be a big enough issue that the government needs to change that to attract more operators?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. No one will be crying because of the gambling operators, you know. So I'm not sure that the government would be taking any measures or making things easier for them. At least I don't have any information in that something's happening in that direction. In Montenegro, as I said, we still don't have the new legislation, so we are yet. It remains to be seen what the new law. It also didn't mention that, and what lacks, what Montenegrin regulations lack is to regulate the issue of problem gambling. You know, basically right now we don't have anything regulated in that respect. There are any obligations of operators in that respect. The only initiative comes from the operators themselves, who organize their internal initiative regarding the prevention of problem gambling. But as far as the legislation is concerned, you basically don't have any obligation with that respect imposed on the operators, and that's really something that has to be regulated under the new law.
I can see Zoltan's popped up again. I don't know if we're running out of time, but just before we go, has anyone got any questions for the panel? If you do, just unmute yourself. If not, I'd just like to say a big thank you to both Zlatan and Luka.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your time this morning, and thank you to Zoltan for having us on. And I wish you all a very good rest of webinar.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zlatan. Luka, nice to see you again. And somehow it's really good that we managed to set things up, and we will be streaming on YouTube soon. So I have Andrews here somewhere. Okay, let's ask him. Hi, Andrews, can you hear me? Andrews, can you hear me? Let's see. Okay, it seems that we are having some Andrews is having some difficulties, but in the meantime, I see that Dainis is on. Dainis, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Me? Yes, and we can see you too. Let's. I see Andrews has just written me. Okay, Vladimir, is Vladimir here? Hi, Sergey, I can see you now.
Hi.
Okay, let's see. Artem is he's not connected, I see. Okay. Okay, Serge is here. Everyone is here. Andrews.
Hi, Andrews.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Happy to see you.
Okay, so
let's just, in the meantime, let's just do a quick check who's here. I see Artem is still missing. I just sent him an email. Either way, we are starting.
Okay, so but are we live or not?
Yes.
Oh, okay, we're live. Okay, because some strange noise is there, and I don't know if that's from Zoom or not.
That's from Zoom, most probably.
Is it?
It's beeping like blong.
It's like phone calling. Hi Zlatan, happy to see you.
I like phone calling. It's the same? Okay,
yes,
so
the same for me.
I will just ignore that. Okay.
No, it will disappear. It's most probably from the chat.
Yeah.
Or somebody has the Wire Up Zone chat open somewhere. And
Okay. I have a I have someone who told me that it's in Meta. Thanks to Meta.
Artem, can you hear us? Because he's already here.
Yeah, he does. He's connecting.
Okay. And let's see if we can also connect to YouTube in the meantime. Okay.
Okay, so we're me, Zoltan, Dinas, Evgenia, Sergey. Okay, we still wait for Artem. We're waiting for Vladimir.
I think Artem was with us already.
He's joining now.
Okay, yeah, so okay, yeah. Hi, Artem. I'll just switch to this a bit better. Okay.
And it seems we are also live on YouTube, so behave.
We will.
Okay, so we're I think Vladimir is still missing, and that's it. Or we can. When is the official start? Is that
2 minutes? In 2 minutes.
Okay. Dennis, is that a hotel room?
Yep.
Okay.
I hope that the internet coverage will be fine.
Yeah. It seems that no one's is lagging. Well, we'll see. Okay, so in 1 minute we will begin. I'm not sure if the audience can see us and hear us right now, or will we wait for other panels to somehow stop?
Yes, they can hear us and see you well, so you can start. And Vladimir will probably join in the meantime.
Okay, good. So basically we're practically all set. Very, very nice. Really nice that we're on time. Hi, everybody. And let's talk about Ukraine. The majority of us, except of me and most probably except of me and Denis, are Ukrainian nationals, or representing local Ukrainian businesses, or let's say focusing on Ukraine as one of the key markets for the very early future, near future. So let's begin with the introduction of everybody. I'll just tell the name and the company, and you can go forward with a short introduction of yourself. So let's start with Denis Niedra, because he's the first one from my side to the right, from NLabs. Yeah, so introduce yourself a bit, and let's say tell me more about why are you in this panel, because you haven't been you're Optibit basically, or NLabs hasn't been in Ukraine since earlier, so please do so right now.
Yeah, thanks, Andrews. Hello, everyone. Hello, Andrews. Yeah, so yeah, you decided to start with a guy who doesn't represent Ukraine by the nationality or like by the business. Yeah, we as NLabs, we don't have like significant revenues coming from the Ukraine now, but as a part of our future and like the long-term strategy we share with our like shareholders and what we share publicly, we see ourselves only in the regulated markets, and now 95% of our revenues coming from the regulated markets. Yes, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Sweden. Yeah, so last year we decided to enter Belarus. Everything is ready there with the exception of the IT, and the logical step in our future development to enter the next regulated market, which is Ukraine. Yeah, that's challenging. Yeah, we're not like going to be like top 3 company from the start, but with the small steps we will try to cut the big slice of the pie of the Ukrainian license online gaming market. Okay. Yeah, so as you might know, yeah, we're #1 in Baltics. We're like quite big leader there in terms of the online gaming with our flagship brand Optibet, but now we're launching more new brands, and we're more like online casino company, neither the betting.
Okay, understood. So thanks a lot, and I have Evgenia Derban, who doesn't want you to slice a big slice of pie in Ukraine.
We do.
Hi, Evgenia. She represents Parimatch, which has quite big roots, quite extensive roots in Ukraine. So please introduce yourself shortly, briefly, and yeah, very nice to see you.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello Andrew. Thank you very much for introduction. Well, since our brand was originally established in Ukraine in 1994, but being an international company, of course, we are really much interested in Ukrainian market and keep an eye on the legalization process. Now we are holding licenses in a number of countries, including Kazakhstan, Belarus, then Tajikistan and Cyprus. And our brand is also represented in a number of countries under franchise agreements, for example, in Tanzania and Russian Federation. So yes, we are interested a lot, and we definitely keep an eye on what is going on in Ukraine.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now, moving to Sergey Romanenko, you're an operator too. It's the majority of us, except of the lawyers, except of the attorneys, are operators here in this panel. But you're a bit of a different operator than everyone else. You're a poker network representative. So please introduce yourself and your interest in Ukraine, apart from that you're yourself Ukrainian.
Hi everybody. My name is Sergey. I represent CIS office of GG Poker. GG Poker for now is one of the, I think, 2 largest poker sites in the world. And we are working around all the world. We have a license, UKGC license, we have MGA license, and we are thinking to have a license in Ukraine. And I'm from Ukraine, I'm living in Ukraine, and because of this, thanks Zlatan. I take part in this conference.
Okay.
And I will answer for the questions about the poker.
Okay. And I think we have Artem Kuzmenko, who is an attorney, a Ukrainian attorney with in-depth information and knowledge and experience in gambling legislation, drafting of the legislation itself. And I think he is currently the last panelist on the list because Vladimir is still not with us. So hi, Artem. Let's try if you're live. Yeah, you're live.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. Why I'm here? Because our company was involved in law development process, and actually, personally, I work with Parliament, and we know a lot about Ukrainian gambling law. And I think I will tell some details how it will be and what we have now in Ukraine with legislation.
Okay, great. And I see that we already have Vladimir Malakchit. So hi, you should unmute yourself. Introduce yourself a bit. I think you're the only real B2B representative here in the panel, because all others are the operators or semi-operators, semi-B2Bs, and you're the only real B2B. So really nice to have you here. Introduce yourself very briefly, and let's go speaking about the legislative framework. Hi.
Hi guys, nice to meet you all. Yeah, I think we are the only one with in Ukraine from B2B who is participating in different conferences as well. And I think my main goal is to provide to people like B2B approach on Ukrainian market after receiving the full information about licenses, about how to move forward with the operators, what should be from marketing strategy, from business point of view. So I hope to provide us as much information as possible.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's begin. We took only 8 minutes. That's perfect. So let's begin. What's going on in Ukraine right now? Because I think all the audience knows that it was a long journey for the Gambling Act to come into the stage that it's right now. So let's skip that long journey and let's talk about where are we at currently. And I think the most knowledgeable people here to talk about the legislative framework are two lawyers, so Evgenia and Artem. Can you please introduce one from as an external service provider, legal service provider, and one as an in-house of the information and struggles may be that an operator or future operator has or had up until now, and some sort of let's say inside information of what could we expect in the near future from the secondary legislation perspective, which we still lack, in particular the technical portion of the secondary legislation, the monitoring system when it's going to be launched, and not even speaking about the tax framework, which nobody knows which route will go. So Artem, could you please go forward about introducing what's currently there, what's happening today, basically.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would say a few words about the history of the process. This will help to understand how the market will develop. So how it was, as you said, it was damn hard. The process of preparing the bill began more than 1.5 years ago. and I took part in this process from the very beginning. We worked with Parliament, with experts, and more than 3,500 amendments were submitted to the bill before the second reading. So it was a really difficult process, and a lot has changed during this time, but the main goal was to develop such a law that would allow the market to be launched quickly. And I believe that we succeed. Sometimes many requirements for operators and equipment are simpler than in other jurisdictions, but still we have some difficulties. So, as I said, the main idea was to start market as fast as possible. And this position will have an impact on all future processes. For now, we have the following situation. Gambling Commission was created last week. In the next few days, we will be announced and competition to elect members of the Gambling Commission, and it should take, I think, two more weeks. In parallel, the Commission for Preparation of Bylaws is working. So I can say that everything in progress, but as we know, for now, from the Cabinet of Ministers, the process of approving license conditions may take longer than previously we think. So it still may be some delay, and the license application process may begin in late November, early December.
Okay, and Yevgeny, how do you see that this process? Do you share the same thoughts that you know, it was written in the manner for the industry to go live as soon as possible? Is there enough clarity for, let's say, for international players or the local players? Let's say what's there? You know, are they eligible to enter the market? What's actually the costs behind that? Not speaking about the taxes, but you know, my clients are always like, you know, okay, so could you assist on, you know, in entering the Ukrainian market, because we can't really count how much, you know, will it cost us, you know, the annual costs, the licensing fees. Is that, you know, a final sum, or it's an intermediary sum, or, you know, some similar stuff? So Yevgeny, how do you see that process? Is that a smooth process? Not talking about that long journey, but right now, or do you see, you know, too much unclarity until now?
Thank you. Well, I would agree with you, Andreas and Artem, that it's not totally clear picture in terms of the current law, and we definitely need the secondary legislation to have answers to some questions, which we should wait for 2-3 months. If I understood correctly. And in terms of the law itself, as far as they know, there should be initiatives in order to amend the law which was already signed by the president and came into force. For example, in order to avoid discrepancies in terms of the election of the members of the commission. For us, the important matter here is also the changing of the tax legislation. And I'm sure it's not only for us, but for each and every player in the market, because as for now, the tax burden is huge. It's 80% corporate profit tax, 80% tax on GGR, 80% personal income tax, and you also have this defense contribution being 1.5. If I'm not mistaken, there are 4 bills already registered at the parliament in order to make changes to the tax code, but there were no first hearings so far. And since the parliament was closed due to the COVID until October 20, it's really good question when the parliament can start review the draft and make decision how to change the tax system of gambling. But I must admit that the process is moving, and we we do see the changes almost like every week. As Artem mentioned, within 2 weeks we will have the commission, which can start developing the secondary legislation, take decisions, and the industry will understand the clear rules for the industry.
Yeah, that's a very interesting part I wanted to touch base, because it's not always you know, that first importance that the gambling commission has been formed. Like, you know, it's for the industry in the majority of cases, it's not, you know, that important. Okay, we have to have a regulator and that's it. But so what kind of powers will the regulator have? Is that only an enforcer of the primary and secondary legislation, or it will have the power to decide upon the restrictions of the products